My name is Mrs. Bose, and I was an elementary teacher for 10 years. In that time, I helped many beginning teachers get things up and running in their classrooms, and I'm here to do the same for you. Let's talk about reading group rotations. You may be thinking that you have so many students and so many reading levels. How are you going to manage it? Don't worry, it is possible to have meaningful instruction, order and productivity, maintain teacher sanity, and most importantly, ensure student success. The key is gradual and specific training. If possible, you should allow 2 to 4 weeks for assessment and training, and as with everything else, be consistent with your rules and procedures. In this module, we will discuss the main components of the reading group rotation plan, ideas for each component, how to introduce each component. We'll touch briefly on assessment, take a close look at the rotation plan, and I'll share a few thoughts on how to best use any additional instructional support you may have in your classroom. Let's first take a look at the 4 main components. They are small group instruction, seat work, centers, and cushion activities. When planning for your small group instruction, make sure your lessons are targeted to the group's instructional level, that they are aligned with your school's reading curriculum, that they are supportable by seat work, and that you have all needed supplies readily accessible. The seat work assignments you give your students should be customized to the group's instructional to independent level, as they need to learn while working largely independently. The assignments should be of an appropriate quantity to allow for completion in the allotted time, and they should relate to the small group's instructional topic. Your centers should be appropriate for multiple ability levels or customizable for different ability levels. They should be based in language and literacy, meaning that they could deal with such topics as reading, writing, including spelling, grammar, punctuation, and penmanship, listening, and speaking. Centers can take a variety of forms and should be refreshed periodically to maintain student interest. Cushion activities should always be readily available for independent student access and use. They should allow for independent choice and creativity in expression, and, like centers, they should be refreshed periodically. So, what are some ideas for each of these components? Let's take a look at each one and see. Your school will likely have adopted a reading curriculum and supporting resources. It may be in the form of Basel readers, trade books, or other literacy programs. Make sure you use the program adopted by your school. Seat work could focus on phonics and spelling, grammar and punctuation, comprehension, or involve some response to reading. It might take the form of quality worksheets, journal writing, or tablet activities, depending on your school's curriculum and resources. Some ideas for centers include, but are certainly not limited to, a computer center, a listening center, or various games or other activities your students can do independently. Your curriculum and your imagination should serve as your guides for choosing and creating your centers. Some ideas for cushion activities, which can be used anytime a student finishes his or her work early, include squiggle books or pages, file folder activities, a genre-specific classroom library, a writing supplies station with a variety of paper types and writing utensils, and tablet activities if you have that resource available. Rules and procedures for doing these activities should be taught and practiced before allowing students to access them freely. By now you may be asking, how can I implement all this with my students? Once again, the key is gradual and specific training. Let me explain about introducing each component. Let's start with small group instruction. That one is easier because it will be under your direct supervision while it's happening. Seat work should also be fairly easy since the existing classroom rules for behavior and procedures will apply. This is another reason it is imperative that you train your students on what your expectations in these areas are from the first day of school. Now for introducing centers. Begin by introducing and demonstrating one center to the whole class. Be sure to explain the accompanying rules and procedures as well. Then, choose a group of 3 to 5 trustworthy students to go to that center while you do a read aloud with the rest of the class. Repeat this process the next day with a new center. Have a new group go to the new center and a different group go to the first center while you do another read aloud with the rest of the class. Continue this pattern until all students are working in centers during this time period. Your cushion activities need to be introduced gradually as well. Introduce one activity per day to the whole class. Explain rules and procedures needed for working independently and allow the class to practice doing each activity for 15 to 20 minutes as may be appropriate. Clarity and consistency are absolutely key for this and every component in this rotation plan, so be sure to establish those firmly with your class. Now, before we discuss the rotation plan, let's talk about how you will form your groups. The first step is assessment. Your school may use the Phonological Awareness Literacy Screening, or PALS program, the Developmental Reading Assessment Program, also known as the DRA, or some other assessment tool. Be sure to learn about and follow your school's plan for assessment and scheduling. If needed and permissible, divide your reading instructional time into 3 equal blocks and follow this rotation plan that I'm about to explain. After the 2 to 4 weeks of assessment and training on centers, cushion activities, and seat work, you are ready to form your groups and begin your rotations. Groups are often formed according to ability level and given color names, animal names, or other designators. While you may want to let each group choose their own name, make absolutely sure that there is no hierarchy with respect to group designations that is discernible to the students. For purposes of this training, however, I'm using the terms high, middle, and low so that you will see the reasons for rotating the groups in this manner. Begin with your middle group in small group instruction, your low group in centers, and your high group at their seats doing seat work. After the first day, the high group's seat work assignment will be from their small group's lesson with you from the previous day. After the first block of time, send your middle group to work on seat work, bring your low group to work with you in small group instruction, and let your students in your high group who have finished their seat work go to centers. For the last rotation, bring your high group to small group instruction, let your middle group go to centers, and your low group go to their seats to work on seat work. You may notice that seat work follows small group instruction for every group in the class. This is important for maintaining the correlation between the two components as described earlier. Take a moment to click on each button to see the cycle or the flow that each group gets to benefit from in this rotation plan. Everyone starts at a different place, but proceeds through the cycle in the same order. Now, here's a good rule of thumb to use if you happen to have additional instructional support in your classroom. Generally speaking, additional instructional support can come from 2 sources: licensed teachers, such as reading specialists, English for speakers of other languages or ESOL teachers, and special education teachers who may be assigned to your class to help with reading instruction with certain or all students. The other source of additional instructional support may come from aides and volunteers, such as teachers' aides, parent volunteers, or even older students. Unless you have permission to do otherwise, make sure that only licensed teachers are assisting with small group instruction. They may even be able to teach a group for you if you plan the work together. Aides and volunteers can help with seat work, centers, and cushion activities. That's it! Here's a final checklist for you. Learn about your school's reading curriculum and assessment tools. Plan and prepare your centers and cushion activities. Assess your students and form your groups. Train your students and use your instructional support resources well. Now, work your plan. Best wishes to you and all your students.